Welcome back. You've joined us for another episode where we sit around, we talk about action figures, and in a short time from now, in a universe nearby, we are going to talk about everybody's favorite galaxy far, far away. This is the Star Wars episode, probably the first of many, because it's been a part of a lot of our childhood. So I'm here, Mike and Tyler are with me. Guys, how's it going?
Hello.
All right.
Did we get any new acquisitions, or have we been good little boys?
I have no acquisitions, guys. I have been heading in the other direction
Yeah,
as we pack for a potential move.
I was good. I did buy a new toilet for my house, so
That's
that
a
was
big that's a
good.
big one.
Yeah, good move for me.
Well, I mean I've been naughty. I
There you go.
got the Velocitron 5000 Walmart exclusive Generation 2 on the box. It says it's Shadow Strip, but it's actually I'm pretty sure it's Drag Strip from the Stunticons.
Oh, that looks nice.
So I have 3 Generation 2 Stunticons now.
G2 Joe.
Waiting for 2 more. That's right. But that's all I've got. Or I went ahead and put the Generation 2 decals on my 86 Jazz. That video is it should be up by now by the time this releases.
Did you do it or did,
So
did your wife do it?
I did it. I did it. I was really brave and used a heat gun for application so that the stickers would stick better. So yeah, that's what I've been up to. So well, acquisitions were pretty light this week, but fortunately for everyone, our content is not. So we, as I mentioned, are talking about that lovely, lovely galaxy far, far away, Star Wars. And before we get into it, let's just take a minute and we'll go around and let's kind of rehash some of our first memories of maybe watching the movies or just key key memories that growing up made us just really kind of cling to Star Wars. So Mike, how about you start us off?
I will. I having an older brother, and I'm sure Joe relates. They were just always around, man. Star Wars was always on. Toys were always around. I remember taking Chewbacca on zany adventures everywhere all the time, having vehicles around, like X-Wings and Millennium Falcons. The Darth Vader's TIE fighter was always something that I remember looking at. Chewie broke into it a couple times. Always around, kind of like comfort food, like chicken and dumplings for your collection. Just there, makes your belly warm.
That's what's up. How about you, Tyler?
Yeah, Star Wars, collectively, the original trilogy are the first movies that I remember thinking like I love these movies. Like these are amazing. I love them. I would watch them multiple times a day.
Really?
Especially like Empire. Like I have I still I don't think I have it anymore, but I had a VHS tape. My aunt recorded Empire Strikes Back for me back in the day. Those of you who are younger than us, back in the day, TV shows would play on over the airwaves, and we didn't have TiVo or any of that kind of stuff. We actually had to have a VCR and plug it in and record it. And so I had a copy that I probably wore it out of Empire Strikes Back, complete with all the '80s commercials that played throughout the movie. So I very distinctly remember having the movie memorized as well as the commercials and which commercial was coming up when, because that was just part of my experience of Empire. And it blew my mind at some point in time when I actually got real copies of the video and watched it without the commercials. Didn't know that was possible. I remember distinctly thinking, I didn't know you could watch a movie and not watch commercials in the middle of it. That's amazing. And yeah, I mean, just the Battle of Hoth for me, just absolutely peak till today. Like that's peak entertainment in terms of watching a movie for me. Absolutely love it. The giant Probably the source of my obsession with giant robots is probably the AT-ATs in the Battle of Hoth. Interestingly enough, I didn't grow up with Star Wars vehicles. I had a ton of GI Joe vehicles. I did not have any Star Wars vehicles, and I think that might actually be the source of my obsession with vehicles was that I wanted them desperately, but never ever had them as a child.
So, what all of you acquired recently to fill that void?
Well, nothing. He's been moving.
Yeah, I mean, recently is a relative term, right? But I've got 3 X-wings. I've got Luke's Red 5, Big's Red 3, and a third one that's the same model that I plan to make, Porkins X-wing. And I have Poe's X-wing. I have the Arc 170 from the Clone Wars. I have 3 clone gunships, I think. I actually have 2 Arc 170s. I have the Tiger Stripe, the blue and white Tiger Stripe with the jaws, and then I have the regular red and white Arc. I also have the matching Tiger Stripe gunship. That's one of my all-time favorite vehicles. Period, regardless of franchise. I got the E-wing recently. I have Din Djarin's. Well, actually, I have all of the ships they've produced for Din Djarin. So I've got all of that stuff. I still don't have an AT-AT. It's on my list, but I still don't have an AT-AT. I want one, but I'm also mindful that it's going to take up a lot of space when I get one. So,
It's beefy.
yeah.
It's, I mean, it might be beefier than the USS Flag.
It's taller, I think. Certainly.
It's taller, but not as
It's
not as
yeah.
Not
much
as
space.
wide. Not as wide. But I mean, if you have one AT-AT, you really need to set up 4 or 5 of them if you're going to recreate the Battle of Hoth. You got to have several. So
Sure.
that's the kind of thing that's going to multiply, like Sky Strikers multiply.
Tyler, the vehicle guy.
Yeah. So anyway, those are my early memories. Like I can distinctly remember when the spoiler alert here, guys. The "I am your father" moment was mind blowing to me. Just nothing but fond memories of watching those movies all throughout my childhood and continue to watch them into my adulthood.
Yeah. Mine definitely started young. Like that's like I'd even declared a fandom. Like I was just naturally drafted into the Star Wars. Our oldest brother, what we would do is he still had all of his action figures from the 80s, and I was actively collecting the Power of the Force stuff from like the early to mid 90s. And what we would do is every now and then, like whenever we would play, we would get all of our guys out. We would lay them all on the floor, and we would draft. We would do like an NFL or like NBA like sport style draft of all the like characters that we were gonna like casting ourselves as, basically. And he would like kind of play us through little scenarios. It was kind of like playing Star Wars D&D, but like we didn't make up our own characters. We were actually like, if I picked Luke, I was Luke. If he picked Obi-Wan, he was Obi-Wan. And so I remember a lot of that. And then I also remember one time like we went out in the backyard, he found like a bunch of rocks and mixed up some mud, and he built like the Obi-Wan's house out of like rocks and mud with like a little room, and it was super cool. It didn't last long, but it was really cool. And then the giant hole in the backyard up against the house that Simon had dug. He would stick toothpicks in it, and it became the Sarlacc pit. That was a lot of fun. But really, the biggest memory I have was when I was 5. I was about 5. I was definitely in kindergarten, and I had gotten it was the first time I actually like came down. Like I was diagnosed with asthma. I couldn't breathe like the entire weekend, and my mom wound up taking me to the hospital. They stuck me in a hospital bed, and they were like, the doctor told my mom, just like, you cannot go home until he can breathe, basically. And so I was in the hospital all weekend. She felt so bad, and it was all the way like across town, and it was like maybe a 40-minute drive from our house. So she went to Target just across the street. She's like, "Hey, I'm going to go get you like a coloring book and some crayons or something, because the 5-year-old kid stuck in a hospital trying to breathe, kind of boring." So when she was gone, I started flipping through the channels, and Return of the Jedi was on Sci-Fi, and that was like that. It basically felt like being visited by an old friend, and just like seeing Luke stare down Jabba the Hutt in Jabba's palace. I was like, okay, like this isn't so bad. Eventually, I got the breathing and got to come home, but it's one of those things where no matter what, Star Wars is always there for me. And anytime I get sick, I still just throw on Return of the Jedi, just out of force of habit. So there's that. Now, I think we're gonna try something different. Whereas instead of going through and listing our 5 favorites, blah blah blah, we are gonna try something a little different because Star Wars is so expansive, and a lot of some of I know Tyler and I's favorite stuff comes from the legends and the realms beyond, episodes 1 through 6 and Rogue One. So instead of going through and listing our 5 favorites that we kind of normally do, we're going to try what I'm affectionately referring to as roundtable favorites, where we have a list of 5 kind of subjects, and we're going to just go around and talk about the ones that we like. So, first up, it's not Star Wars without Jedi. So we're just gonna go around and we're gonna list our favorite Jedi, maybe a little reasoning why. So Tyler, since you're the Empire guy, why don't you start us off?
Can the Imperial Knights count? I mean, we could go that route. We won't.
No.
Okay, all right. We won't go into the deep cuts. Favorite Jedi, Kyle Katarn. This is a pretty easy one for me. There are several that I enjoy from the Legends stories, but Kyle is my favorite. Dude, ex Imperial officer turned rebel turned Jedi, reluctant Jedi, very reluctant Jedi, very you meet him in the Dark Forces games, and as he's learning his Jedi skills, he's using a lightsaber and he's using blasters. So I'm very much of a fan of, like, hey, lightsabers are amazing and they're awesome, but they're not the only weapon that does great stuff in the Star Wars universe. So I love that he's open to using both, and even as he continues through his journey and becomes a Jedi, he continues to carry a blaster for a lot of that. So really really cool, great story he's got. Falls to the dark side for a little while, comes back, kind of the what you might think of as a stereotypical Star Wars arc, but with some very different things. Like, he to me was the first great Jedi that I ever recognized. Was like, hey, wait a minute, this guy's, maybe he's not all goody two shoes. He's got some shade in his past, and it shows up. So for me, Kyle Katarn is the guy. I very much played him. I can assure you, played him as gray/dark through the games myself. And as you read about him in the lore, he's very much in that middle ground. So sorry, that's it.
All right, what about you, Mike?
Favorite Jedi top 5. How we playing this?
Just your one favorite Jedi.
One
Like
favorite
yeah.
Jedi. I'm going to go Plo Koon.
Interesting.
I was doing laundry, and in my laundry room, I've got a ton of action figures of Plo Koon. It was one of the first episodes of Clone Wars that I remember watching was that Rising Malevolence, where he turned to a clone trooper and who was, saying, we're just soldiers, we should die. And he was just like, not to me. And he wasn't just the guy that got blown up in Revenge of the Sith, So that to me is my favorite Jedi. You got Anakin, Ahsoka, Qui-Gon, Quinlan, but push comes to shove, I like Plo.
Right
I
on.
had my heart broken because in The Mandalorian, they were saying it was going to be Plo, but it ended up being Luke. I'm okay with that, but still, I got a little tease, and I was like, oh man, but it's all good.
Yeah. My favorite Jedi is Obi-Wan Kenobi, and he's my favorite Jedi because he's the standard bearer for what the Jedi Order should be. When basically the Clone Wars and the prequels were basically a train for failure exercise over 3 movies, where like he's not catching any lucky breaks, but he's continuing to stay the course, trust in the Force, and just do the best he can. And especially if you watch the Clone Wars, there's so many times when he could have slipped and fallen to the dark side and gave into that temptation. But he's the one who was probably the best example for Luke of just being like, no matter how bad it gets, no matter how you might feel things are unfair, that doesn't matter. You just need to trust in the Force.
Yeah, like during Clone Wars when Satine died, that was rough. That was a rough episode for old Ben Kenobi.
Obi-Wan Kenobi. Obi-Wan.
So Kenobi, and also it's so easy to think of Obi-Wan Kenobi and think of Ewan McGregor, but we like before we had the prequels and we had the originals, and Alec Guinness put on a masterclass of how to just build a character for the screen. And like to this day, that scene at Obi-Wan's house on Tatooine is still one of the coolest scenes in cinema. Like
Yeah.
it's absolute cinema. And then of course we were fortunate enough to get Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan, who brought a whole new life to it.
We're obviously, I mean, I think all of us monster Star Wars fans, but I don't think it's a stretch to say that old George Lucas was punching above his weight when he cast Obi-Wan for the originals. Like Alec Guinness
And,
is wow.
Well
well, it's
accomplished,
funny.
very accomplished actor.
He was, but he was also the second choice. The original
Yeah.
choice for Obi-Wan Kenobi was Toshiro Mifune from Seven Samurai.
Ah,
So, but
that would have
he
been
turned it.
interesting.
It would have, but he turned it down because he didn't want it to just. I think as the story goes, he didn't want it to just kind of be typecast as like a very samurai-esque kind of character, like the Jedi kind of were. And so George was like, "I understand," and cast Alec Guinness. So all right, moving on. Round 2, favorite Sith. Mike, start us off.
Oh man. I'm gonna go with Asajj Ventress during
Okay.
Clone Wars. I know she turns good later on,
Boo.
Some of the best Sith do.
but man, she was terrifying. Like throughout her journey, she started out being Dooku's apprentice, even though Palpatine wasn't about that life, and he didn't like the idea of Dooku having an apprentice. So then you got her time as, a witch. That was scary. And then, her arc being good and being shunned because Emperor Palpatine was like, hey, I don't like your apprentice. She's getting too powerful. Means you're getting too powerful. And so it showed that like Sith are very paranoid and they live in that cycle of just fear and hatred and it just spools up, and I really like how it showed that Emperor Palpatine even was a little insecure at times. Not that I'm saying Asajj was on his level, just wasn't. But I'm just saying Emperor Palpatine was also paranoid,
Mm-hmm.
and that just kind of fed his power. Even you got to see that in the comic book series with Darth Vader, how he was always trying to essentially ground Vader, and then that made Darth Vader
Yeah.
paranoid. And it was just a never-ending cycle of just paranoia and fear.
Welcome to the Sith.
Exactly.
My favorite Sith is Darth Revan from the Knights of the Old Republic. I almost said Darth Vader just because that's everybody's favorite. Like, you can't call yourself a Star Wars fan and not absolutely love Darth Vader. But just personally, with just the vice grip that Knights of the Old Republic had on me back in the day,
Yeah.
I'm going Darth Revan. Just the whole arc of being a Jedi, falling to the dark side, finding redemption, just absolute, just peak video gaming. That's mine. Tyler.
Yeah, let me first. I want to say I was not thumbs downing Mike's choice of Asajj. I was thumbs downing the arc that I get a little tired of with the Sith redeeming themselves or being redeemed. Like I get a little annoyed with that. My favorite Sith is easily Darth Malgus. Just absolutely, absolutely brutal, brutal fighter with his lightsaber. Great story in the Old Republic game where he was introduced. Really iconic looking Sith with his especially once he gets his mask. Just a big imposing figure. His even his lightsaber hilt looks like it has little axe blades, up there where the beam comes out. I mean, just everything about him to me is like this is what a Sith should be. If you haven't if you ever watch if you haven't seen the cutscenes that were done for the Old Republic video game, like guys, go watch that. Go watch those cut. Those are some of the best fight scenes ever
Yeah,
done
I
Star
don't play the
Wars
game, but
ever.
I really enjoy the cutscenes.
They're out of this world. Like the fact that we haven't had any media follow that up on that level is so disappointing because they really set that bar and said, "Hey, look at what could be done if you really take this
Mhm.
serious and start putting together some amazing fights." Oh, anyway, but definitely Darth Malgus for me, dude's absolutely he's it, peak Sith.
And
I
I'm sure we're going to mention the original trilogy at some point in time.
I
I don't
I
think our
did.
list have appeared.
I mentioned Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
Yeah,
Okay,
that's right.
that
Kenobi's
makes me
definitely
feel
an
a little
OT.
bit
Yeah.
better.
yeah.
Don't get me
So
wrong. I mean, the
don't
original trilogy got me there, right? But I mean,
Yeah.
my enjoyment for Star Wars definitely goes way beyond, and
yeah.
obviously some of my favorite
Yeah.
stuff is not in that. So anyway,
Yeah. So we got Jedi, we got Sith. Favorite vehicle or ship? I'm gonna let our resident vehicle guy. I'm gonna quit trolling and I'm gonna let our resident vehicle guy go first.
all right. Let's see if you guys can follow me here. I had several things I wanted to mention here. Obviously, I have a long list of stuff that I love. I'm gonna go with the Eclipse class Star Dreadnought, aka the Eclipse class Super Star Destroyer, as my favorite Star Wars ship.
Has there been a figure or a vehicle made?
Nope. Nope. The closest thing we've had to any Super Star Destroyer, as far as I know, is the Star Wars Armada tabletop game, Super Star Destroyer, which is an excellent model. I have two of them. They're phenomenal. But we don't have an Eclipse class. The Eclipse
Would
class
that
is.
need to be a HasLab?
Oh, it would have to be. I mean, it really couldn't do it on any existing scale because it's a Super Star Destroyer. I mean, it would dwarf the USS Flag. It would just be massive. But think Super Star Destroyer, but has almost like an axe blade front, and it has an axial super laser like a superstar or like one of the beams from the Death Star built into this ship, so it can basically go delete capital ships.
And like 5 to
Oh
7
wow.
Buckies inside the Star
At
Destroyer.
least, at least, yeah, at least, yeah. So
So what about you, Mike?
My favorite ship, I'm gonna say a Y-wing.
Ooh.
Like there's just something about the sleekness and elegance of that bomber.
Now, which Y-wing? Are you talking Clone Wars
we're
era, or
talking
are you
sleek and
talking?
elegant. We're talking Clone Wars. Gotta be.
Clone Wars.
Because I prefer the OG trilogy, where it's like
I
it's
get
pared
that,
down and it's just a
and
workhorse.
they're well loved by the time you get to the original trilogy, so I get it.
Yeah,
But man, that and I say that because I remember the last episode of the Clone Wars. Man, that was so intense. And
that was
that
intense.
Y Wing that they used, I have no idea why they haven't made an action figure of that yet. No idea. Because it's such an important part of the story.
That's such a good ship to choose because exactly what you guys were just talking about. That's a great example of, hey, here's this ship that was top of the line, sleek, I mean, cutting edge, right? Well, by the time the rebellion comes around, this thing's old and busted, and they've all been put together more or less out of spare parts, and it shows. Like all the pretty
Mhm.
stuff is gone. Like we don't have time to make these things
Yeah.
look good. We're just trying to make them function, and that's a great picture into the rebellion and how it, what it was relying on and the resources they were using to fight the empire. It was, this was not the best of the best technology. This was we're piecing this stuff together out of old
Yeah.
things that we had to go grab. So great ship for many reasons, but yeah, awesome.
That was also just the rationale behind the original trilogy, because George Lucas was very adamant. Everything has to, like, this world, this galaxy has to feel worn. It
Yep.
has to feel lived in. It just everything is dirty, grimy. it's falling apart, held together with whatever the Star Wars equivalent of duct tape and hope is. But yeah, and the Y-wing is perfect for that. It's just an old beater workhorse bomber, and
Yeah,
it's just great. And our oldest brother actually did a custom Y-wing for me of that of Captain Rex's Y-wing from that episode.
it looks really cool.
It's so yeah, I'll definitely show it off, but it's lovely. But my favorite ship, my ship is the YT 2400 freighter, more commonly referred to and known from Shadows of the Empire as the Outrider. Michael said it a while back that he's not really a Han guy, but I'm I tend to agree. I'm definitely that weird '90s kid who prefers Dash Rendar, and that's just because Shadows of the Empire, when I got my Nintendo 64, had an absolute just death hold over me. That game, it was like freedom. It felt like freedom. So a lot of fond memories with
Definitely.
that Outrider. So that one's my ship. So moving on, hinted at it with the Sith, but we're gonna go in and we're gonna go favorite Star Wars video game. Mike, go ahead and start us off.
I'm gonna go Star Wars Battlefront 2. Like, I really like that game. To this day, I still don't understand why EA just kind of gave up on it. You think they could have released DLC into oblivion on that thing? Different packs, different levels, different heroes you could play. Man, the story mode, I really liked it. I know Tyler's not a fan of that redemption arc. Hope shoot them into the ground with the AT-AT. But the graphics were great. I remember I was playing a battle in Felucia and I got to get Anakin out, and I remember just loving it and looking down at the clock and going, wow, I haven't went to bed yet, and I should. Because you can play those Clone Wars guys and then you get enough power and then you can swap to someone with a lightsaber, or a better option. And man, I even remember enjoying playing Kylo Ren. It was such a fun game. That first level, on Endor with the Inferno Squad, hearing them talk and then seeing the Death Star blow up, and you get to see that with them. I thought that was really cool. Also, some of the levels, like Vardos, that level was just gorgeous to me because it was very gray and dark. Really liked that level. So fun to play too, because that was like one of the first levels that, if I remember correctly, you got to actually fight the Empire. So I know Tyler.
Look, you're right though. The story mode in that game is phenomenal. Participating in Operation Cinder, I mean, like,
Yeah.
wow, like that was awesome. Obviously, not a big fan of the redemption that happens with the main character there. But again, we get introduced to Inferno Squadron. We get some Imperial Special Forces. We get a lot of really neat stuff comes out of that game and that
Yeah,
story. So
and there was a scene with Luke even in the story mode, and he was
that's
just
right.
like, "Can I have that?" And he's like, "Because I asked." And it was like Luke could
It
have
was
came in
peak.
there and just sabered Del Mico up, but man, he just asked, and Del Mico was like, "You know what? Sure, dude. I'm not going down with this ship."
Right on. Here you go.
So, proverbially, not literally going down with the ship, but I really enjoyed that game. Wish EA didn't abandon it. I know there's all kinds of mods and stuff like that, but I think they just left some money on the table, which is crazy to think about a video game company doing nowadays.
Especially EA.
I know, right? But that's all I got for that one.
All
I
right,
wanted to
Tyler.
let the record
Oh,
state I wanted Joe to talk about Shadows of the Empire, so I didn't take it from him.
yeah.
Big brother gives.
Very nice. Knights of the Old Republic,
Okay.
hands down. Knights of the Old Republic.
Yep.
There are so many great games that I absolutely love. The Dark Forces games, Jedi Knight, Jedi Knight 2, Jedi Academy. Like, I love those games. But Knights of the Old Republic, ever since the first time I played it and still today, is my all-time favorite video game of any genre, anywhere, ever. Period. Like, that is my favorite video game. I love it. It is amazing. The story is phenomenal. The arc is incredible. The characters are fantastic. HK-47, like holy moly, like what a fantastic droid. Just the ability to play that either way. You can play as, through the you can do a light side arc, you can do a dark side arc, you can recruit different followers. Like, it blew my mind when I was going through the dialogues with characters and realized that some of these characters I can actually recruit and bring onto my team. Like, oh my gosh, how many characters did I miss that on? Tracking down crystals for your lightsaber, like, just the detail that went into that game is just so outstanding, and the lore is deep. The stories are great. The characters are phenomenal. That game is peak video game for me. And obviously peak Star Wars video game for me. Just, I can't say enough good stuff about it. It's incredible. Still have a copy of it installed on my PC right now, heavily modded to update graphics and everything. It's certainly nowhere near what today's standards would be, but it's still.
Well, now I got to know, what color was your lightsaber?
I ran different colors. I ran a lot of orange and red. I can tell you what arcs I tended to play. I can't tell you enough good stuff about that. I love that game. Same kind of rented that game from where I grew up in a town called Edmond here in Oklahoma, and we had a franchise of video game rental stores called Randy's M&M's. Rented that game one Friday at Randy's M&M's and did not, like, sat down and played it Friday night. Did not go to sleep. Played all through the night. Played Saturday until I beat the game, and then passed out. And when I woke up, I started another one and started playing again. Like, I mean, that game had me. Played it on
So
Xbox, by the way.
if you could have one figure from that game, what would it be?
I've got it. HK-47.
Nice.
Actually, I have a couple great Revens too, but HK-47 for me. Super, just very memorable, entertaining, hilarious dialogue from him. And it,
Yeah, I have HK-47 and the Revens, but
Yeah.
the one I really want is a Canderous Ordo.
Yeah.
He was my favorite part, like non-main character.
Yep.
Yeah, character from that.
There's so much goodness in that, guys. I can't. If you haven't played it, you got to play it. Like, there's a mobile version. That game is available on mobile, and
Yep.
it looks appropriate for a mobile game. So I hate playing games on cell phones. I'm not a mobile game guy, but I played that through on my phone many times as well, just because I love that game so much. So anyway,
I think I spent, what was it, like $15 to buy it for my iPad, and I've got an old iPad, and it runs it perfectly.
That's beautiful.
So it's, yeah. KOTOR is definitely it's I don't want to like I don't want to cheap out and just say it was like my 1A or 1B, but I'm going to say, since KOTOR was adequately spoken about in the degree in which it deserves, I'm perfectly willing and glad to acquiesce that to you so that I can talk more about Shadows of the Empire, and specifically why it was so perfect and of its time. So back in the 90s, Lucasfilm decided to do an all-out campaign, like marketing campaign blitz, where they were going to publish a new story that takes place between episodes 5 and 6. With that story, they were going to hire a composer and an orchestra to do a completely new soundtrack to go along with that novel. They were also going to release a line of comic books detailing the bounty hunters, specifically Boba Fett trying to get to Jabba's palace with his bounty to get paid, and all of the other bounty hunters trying to cut in on his deal, and him outsmarting and outwitting all of them. The video game, loosely based on the book, but also kind of taking liberties where it needed to make sense as a video game, which in and of itself was so ahead of its time that a lot of people, whenever they played it, I remember them complaining because it's like, oh, like the movement's so clunky and it feels like he's running on glass because he's just sliding all around. But I didn't care because I think I was like 8 at the time, and it was so beyond anything that I could have hoped for. and also new action figures, and just so they basically made an entire marketing campaign for Star Wars movie without the movie. And you know, some people would say, "Oh, it didn't really work. It really needed the movie," but I didn't care. Like I had new Star Wars, and I was happy. But also, I remember because that was such a kind of transition time because like our oldest brother was graduating high school and leaving to go to college, so that was the first game I got when I got my Nintendo 64 for Christmas. And I remember the first level was the Battle of Hoth, and you were in the snow speeder and you had to fly around and do all the Battle of Hoth stuff. And I remember the camera being so wonky and not being able to really kind of get it that he had to beat that level. And once he beat that level, it was the escape from Echo Base, and then you were on foot and running through Echo Base trying to get out. And that was the level Mike was like, give me the stick. I'm gonna get us through this. And
I
then
think that was you because that was Moss Eisley. I was
no
Moss Eisley.
Moss Eisley came later.
Huh.
Escape from Echo Base was level 2, followed by the asteroid field, which you took out, and then it was the Ord Mantell junkyard, which the IG-88 boss absolutely terrifies me to this day. It's still like it's
Yeah.
so weird seeing an IG unit be kind of turned into a joke, like from the Mandalorian show, because I'm just like, you don't understand what that thing's capable of. But so, and then after that was the Ord Mantell, or not the Ord Mantell, it was the Gaul spaceport where you fight Boba Fett, and then you fight Boba Fett's ship on foot. It seemed really unfair, but it was terrifying. And then after that, it was the Tatooine speeder chase race level, and that was the one where I kind of took over, and I was able to beat that, and then eventually beat the whole game. But that was a game that we all three needed to kind of form like Voltron to kind
Yeah.
of take down.
I remember that.
And that was a core memory.
They did at least show in Mandalorian, like they showed some of the combat prowess of the IG, right? I mean, they did a pretty good job of showing that. It was the whole shtick of I'm initiating self destruct. You know, like
Yeah,
you're winning. Why are you self destructing, dude? You're fine. You're
yeah,
smoking these dudes. Come on. So yes, the IG that IG fight to this day very memorable to me in video games as well. Like
yeah.
that was a tough fight and
Hmm.
really cemented IG-88 in my brain as like this. Wow, that guy's
Yeah.
legit.
And I say it was ahead of its time because without that game, they don't get the piloting of the ships, like because there were a couple ship levels
Yep.
where you're in space and flying around. Without that, we don't get Rogue Squadron for N64
Which
later that later.
so good.
And then without that swoop race level, we don't get Star Wars Episode 1 Racer
Pod
in
racing, yeah.
99. So
So if the Outrider was a HasLab, how many would you get?
I could really only afford one, but I would think about two. It would also I say it would depend on the figures they include with it, but honestly, as soon as I see the Outrider, it's a done deal. It's a done deal for me. So moving on, final thing we'll talk about in this roundtable segment. Overall favorite character, your guy or gal who just is Star Wars to you, Tyler.
Oh, you started with me. Darth Vader. Darth
Yep.
Vader. When I think of Star Wars, I think of Darth Vader. I think of his red lightsaber. I think of his the breathing, the sound effects of him breathing. I think of the scene at the end of Rogue One, where you finally get to see him just unleash. Just because we didn't have the technology in the 70s and 80s to be able to turn him loose and really show what he could do. And seeing that at the end of Rogue One, yeah,
Let me
and
ask you a question.
sure.
In Ahsoka, when you see Anakin and Darth Vader kind of mix and mingle, did you like that or no?
This was at the end of Ahsoka the series.
Yeah.
I didn't watch it. Sorry,
Spoiler alert.
yeah, sorry. Eventually, guys, I will watch it. I'm such a huge Grand Admiral Thrawn fan. You have to really piss me off to get me to not watch something that actually has Grand Admiral Thrawn, and they really pissed me off.
What they do?
Forcing Sabine to try to be a Jedi. Just like, listen, Sabine is a great character in her own right. She's a Mandalorian, like she's bad to the bone. She's not force sensitive. She's not force sensitive, then you're not a Jedi. It's listen, I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player. I've known that since I was in high school at least. Like I do not have that skill set. I don't have it.
Yeah.
And there's no amount of training that you can do with me to make me an NBA basketball player. There's just some things that don't work and you don't need to force it. Don't do that.
Also, Grand Admiral Thrawn, he is very much a book villain.
Yes.
And it
Yes.
is very hard to translate a
Yeah.
villain that works on the page to on the screen and not lose a giant chunk of what made everyone fall in love with this character.
Yep. That's very fair. I didn't love Thrawn in Rebels either. Like love him in the books. The original Thrawn trilogy, the redo of the Thrawn trilogy is, or it's not really a trilogy now, but it's kind of it's good, but it's not anywhere near what the original was. So one of the great.
I will politely defend my homegirl, Sabine Wren. Being force sensitive, you're kind of like an electrical plug, right? You need to have training to be able to plug in. And her first master was Kanan, and he was dealing with bigger force stuff. And Ahsoka, they covered in the show that she messed up, so no one really was able to plug her into the force. Although I do think they say that she was force sensitive, but during that time there really isn't a lot of Jedi to help out and train her correctly. So that's just my 2 cents, not politely.
Yeah, I think that, look, even if let's say that she was force sensitive, I maybe they said that in the show. I don't, again, I didn't watch all the show. I've only watched a few episodes of it. Maybe they decided that she didn't need to be. You don't need to force that on her. She was a good enough character on her own. Like this kind of goes back into, not every great character in Star Wars has to be a Jedi or has to be force sensitive. Like there are
see that.
a ton of great Star Wars characters that are not. And the whole idea of the Jedi and the Sith is that this is a very small, very unique subset of people that actually have enough of the Force sensitiveness, because the Force is in all living beings, right? But to have enough of that sensitivity to actually be able to manipulate it and control it and do those things. And anyway, to me, it was like, no. And listen, let's be honest. The Clone Wars, I love the prequel trilogy. I love the Clone Wars show, but that's not my favorite Star Wars. So Ahsoka in general is not, like, she's just kind of meh to me. Like, cool, great, neat Jedi. I don't have any specific ties or love for that character. So the appeal there for me was not super strong. For example, Obi-Wan Kenobi, his show, I watched the crap out of that and I was tremendously disappointed. But I was gonna watch it because
Tyler's a hot take machine over here.
Yeah, that's no. Not everything is a hot. That is not a hot take. Like, there's in that 6-episode miniseries, there is an hour and a half that is just absolutely solid.
Yeah,
it did not need to be 6 episodes.
Agreed.
That's true.
But besides, I mean, as far as the Ahsoka show, everybody watched that for Balin Skull anyway. Like, that was,
that very much a highlight of that show for me.
Such a out of left field character that I was just like, how have we not gotten more of him?
Incredibly sad that we won't.
And it's super sad.
Incredibly sad. 100%. Like that was, for me, that was the highlight of that show.
Yeah.
In fact, I think the last episode I watched is where he kind of, if he comes back, I don't know, but he kind of walks off. They're in the other dimension, and he kind of walks off. And I was like, oh well, that's the reason I continued to watch the show. I go, screw this, I'm out. So maybe that's what they did to make me mad, Mike. He wandered off into he did the old spaghetti western exit, and I thought I'd never see him again, and turns out I won't.
All right, Mike, your
This is
favorite
going to come
character.
as a big surprise to everyone, but Chewbacca. So I liked his character, how he's just kind of in the shadows. Even in the sequel trilogy, like he was just that guy that everyone got along with. Didn't like how they always put him in peril, like he always needed to be rescued. I thought that was weird. Then you have, like in the comic books, him and Black Chrysanthemum went toe to toe. He held his own even though he was poisoned. Like Black Chrysanthemum eventually overpowered him, I think. But just always there with Han,
Always loyal, always a bro.
always loyal. Plus, I like how they have him just in frame every now and then, and people talk to him, and he just kind of gives them a look. He's able to look gentle with, even though he's this big, gigantic alien. Plus, we got to see him pretty much in every single universe. For whether it be Clone Wars, we got to see him in an episode 2 of that, and then
Pops up in Revenge of the Sith.
yeah, Revenge of the Sith. We see him in there too. So it's like a solid timeline. And even in the Solo movie, it wasn't as bad as I remember
No,
because
this
of boycotting a certain movie.
yeah, the Solo movie. It's funny because I remember not liking it, but then I watched the Snake Eyes Origins movie, and that was so bad that when I somehow wound up rewatching Solo and comparing it to the Snake Eyes Origins movie, I was like, you know
Yeah.
what? At least in the Solo movie, the things that I expect to see in a Han Solo origin movie, I'm seeing.
I
Like I'm seeing him meet Chewie, I'm seeing him
I,
win the
I think they
Falcon.
were running up in that Han Solo line of they got cocky. Don't get cocky.
Yeah,
Because they had a bad movie that came out and it made myself kind of disconnect from that. And I remember I definitely watched it with some bias and I didn't like it. And then I rewatched it one time and I was like, this is horrible.
it's not bad.
The Solo movie is an entertaining movie. It's a good Star Wars movie. It is not. They do a tremendous disservice to Han Solo, the character in that movie. They do a couple things I think that are a disservice to the universe, where they're trying to create this incredibly rare resource that everybody's going to go fight over that nobody's ever heard of until this movie comes out. It's like, hey, we would have heard of that by now if that was
Yeah.
Yeah,
a thing. And by the way, that resource already exists. It's called Bacta. It's incredibly rare. It's incredibly valuable. It literally heals people from the brink of death all the way back to full health. Like this stuff is,
But at the same time, we were also getting stuff like hyperspace jumping.
yeah, yeah. It's if it wasn't Han Solo, if they didn't do the things they did to it to be a disservice to Han Solo, if they didn't try to create that, if they just made it a Star Wars movie that wasn't about a known character, I think it would have been a phenomenal movie. I would have loved it.
and that's the main reason why I think I love Dashran Dar so much is because he's like if people look at him, he's like, oh, he's just like a cheap knockoff Han Solo. It's like, yeah, he's. I mean, if you think you can think about it that way, and that's fine, but he's a blank canvas Han Solo. He's a Han Solo that doesn't come with the same baggage, doesn't come with the same expectations. A lot more creative freedom you could play with, and
Mm-hmm.
that's why they put him in the Shadows of the Empire book, because Steve Perry was like, I want to write Han Solo, but I can't, so I'm going to have a Han Solo stand-in that I can do more with.
It's a big galaxy. There's all kinds of rogues out there.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Joseph, who's your favorite?
If you've been here since episode 1, you already know what I'm going to say, or who I'm going to say. Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker, hands down. Like uh, I feel like the reason why Star Wars is in the shape it's in is because the people who are in charge of it have forgotten who brought them to the dance,
So
and
you
that
mean Luke
person.
Skywalker wouldn't give up on his nephew?
No, Jake Skywalker would and did, but Luke Skywalker would not. Luke Skywalker saw a dude who killed a bunch of his buddies while trying to blow up the Death Star and a bunch of other heinous stuff and said, there's some good in that guy. To find
Mm-hmm.
out, no, he wouldn't try to murder his nephew in his nephew's sleep because he had a bad dream one time. That's just that's Tony Stark level stupid, and but that's okay. I don't
It's
have to worry about that because the sequel trilogy does not exist.
it's just
So
lazy writing. It's just that's just lazy.
I
And
really, I really didn't want to. I really didn't want this to devolve into pooping on the sequel trilogy because I mean, so many people do that on YouTube anyway. But just Luke Skywalker is
I
the
mean,
guy,
there's a
man.
reason people do it, right?
Yeah,
it's
Like,
if you're an old school fan of Star Wars, I'm not saying that you can't be a fan of Star Wars and like that sequel trilogy. By the way, guys, I'm not telling anybody what they can or can't like. I'm just saying if you're an old school fan of Star Wars, there's like a 99.999% chance that you freaking hate the sequel trilogy because of what it did to something that
in particular, the middle one.
yeah,
specifically that one. Yes, agreed. But to
Yeah.
Joe's point, there's enough people out there talking about that.
yeah.
We don't have to beat that horse.
But Luke, you got to see his arc, and in Shadows of the Empire, we got a pretty cool toy with him in that red
Mm-hmm.
armor.
Yep.
So
That they
Luke,
are
man, and
doing that. They're
then when
doing
he
the
came
Black
back in
Series.
Yeah,
Mandalorian,
that's what I want to know. What did you think when he came back in Mandalorian?
Oh, I'll tell you what I thought. I cried. Like
so did I.
like our boy. Listen, like our shout out, like our shout out to Star Wars Theory. Our boy Star Wars Theory wasn't the only one who cried, man. Like I was in
Yeah,
tears.
I was crying not because I was, ecstatic. I was crying because it was like you and Will. I was like, man, they're gonna love this so much. And I was wondering how bad you ugly cried that day you
Oh,
watched it.
it was it was definitely like I was watching it and my wife was kind of like seeing me react and like whenever she saw me like she couldn't really see my tears because we were watching in the dark because we were trying to get like that theater feel. But as soon as she saw like my shoulders just like heaving, she like got up, walked across the living room, and just like hugged
Oh,
me.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it
It's
was
really
intense
cool.
because I remember just being like, this is so awesome. But then it's almost like the shroud of the dark side washed over me, where I was, and then I just got angry, where I was just like, I could have had this in a movie theater, and
Yeah,
instead we got episode 8.
it
Yep.
was it was so cool, man, because you got to see the glove holding the lightsaber, the green lightsaber, and I was like, oh man, it's Luke. And like I said, I thought it was Plo, but it
Yeah.
was like, if it wasn't Plo, I'm glad it's Luke.
You got to see him actually unleashed again. Something we could not have seen in the 70s and 80s because we did not have the effects to be able to do
Yeah,
something like that. You got to see him turn loose. Again, you just saw an episode. You're watching a series literally about this guy named Din Djarin, who's a pretty freaking tough Mandalorian. Like this guy is in the top,
yeah,
0.001%
Yeah.
of fighters in the galaxy, and he's,
They
as is
took the
stated in the episode,
time. They took the time to show him having such a hard time just fighting
against
one of
one.
these.
Yes, and then
yeah.
Luke comes in and just wipes them all out, like
Yeah.
just cruises through them, and that gives you that perspective of how
Mm-hmm.
much more powerful
And he got his
this guy
hallway
is.
scene and
Yep.
Oh, it was
everything.
great.
You
It
Man,
was
can't be a
amazing.
Skywalker with a lightsaber and not get a hallway scene.
It was amazing.
That's the price of doing
it was
business.
awesome.
So, but yeah, Luke Skywalker, man, just that was the first thing I remember dressing. Like he was the first character I remember dressing up as for Halloween. It was in kindergarten, and so it
Nice,
was yeah. It's just that
nice.
was my guy. So
That is, man.
so real quick, that brings us to the end of the roundtable. As far as that, let's just kind of talk favorite movies out of them. I'll just say that I understand and appreciate Episode 5, Empire Strikes Back, is the best film. However, the one that I always throw on when I'm either cleaning house or I'm sick or I don't really feel like watching anything is Return of the Jedi. Similar to that, uh, Revenge of the Sith is the superior film of the prequels. However, I will just like on a Sunday afternoon, I'll just throw on Attack of the Clones and just kind of hang out. Just have that on in the background. What about y'all?
Go ahead, Tyler.
Empire Strikes Back is my favorite, hands down. Like, never beaten, never threatened. It's my favorite. I love to watch that movie. I love, again, Battle of Hoth. Like, I love that. I love that movie. And I will tell you, my second favorite, it's hard to say, it's probably Rogue One. And going into Rogue One, when I was reading about it and the plot, and they were like, yeah, there's no Jedi in this movie, I was like, this is going to be Star Wars without Jedi. This is going to be stupid. It's going to suck. And I could not have been more wrong. I could not have been more wrong. That movie's amazing. The fight, the actual aerial combat on Scarif base, some of the peak star fighting, snub fighting, aerial combat in cinema. Just amazing scene. Absolutely love that. And then of course
So good.
at the end we got our Vader scene that we all deserve so much. And
Orson Krennic was so good.
oh, he's a great,
He's such
phenomenal,
a bad guy.
great villain. Like that's just a really good movie. And I won't taint it. It just showed, but I will say this: that shows you what could have been in Disney's Star Wars cinematic universe,
Yeah.
because that was
Jyn
their
Erso was
first.
so likable, you know.
K2SO, fantastic.
Yep.
Andor, obviously Cassian
Cheer it.
Andor. I
The
mean, yeah,
supporting cast was just all bangers.
just incredible film.
Got to see Saw go down. So good.
I just want to state for the record, if or when we ever crap on or disparage the Disney trilogy, just know that does not include Rogue One, because I don't include Rogue One.
Absolutely
I
not.
don't either.
Like, I don't acknowledge. Yeah,
Rogue
Absolutely
One,
not.
man.
The
that's
only
such a good movie.
The only negative thing that you can say about Rogue One is it shows you how right Disney can get it if they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And they have chosen not to.
Well, also, I think a lot of that had to do with Gareth Edwards, who, like, as soon as he got hired for the job, went up to Lucasfilm and started pouring through old concept art, found the Shadow Troopers, and was just like, "Whoa, how come these never got made?" And it's like, "Oh, it was like a budget thing or whatever." He was like, "I'm putting them in this movie," and just stuff like that. The Hammerhead Cruiser scene, like. That was like my favorite space battle since Return of the Jedi. It was just absolute peak.
Great.
So
great stuff.
But
mine's Revenge of the
Mike?
Sith.
Yeah,
I'm not even gonna blank. Revenge of the Sith. Like the opening crawl, you got to see the rise of Anakin and how the Jedi Order wasn't perfect. You got to see a few of the cracks, few of the mistakes that were made, and like you got to see flaws in Anakin. Even Obi-Wan at some level had to have known what was going on. So everyone had their part to play in the downfall of the Jedi Order. How much of that was covered up by the dark side? Like it took Yoda by surprise, and I think that just shows what a prequel trilogy should do, is just shine light on everything and make Anakin more sympathetic than just being Darth Vader. Like we finally got to see, in episode 4, when Obi-Wan was talking about Anakin being his good friend, like we got to see how good friends they were, especially like at the end, not at the end, but when Anakin and Obi-Wan come back from rescuing Palpatine, he was like, no, you take the credit. He was that business on, I forget which planet.
Cato Nemoidia.
Yeah, he goes, that doesn't count. You got to see, man, they've been through some stuff. And they're close. And so that added more gravitas to the ending. But then we also got to see the Jedi Order, and they weren't perfect. They had some mistakes.
That was not the first team all-stars on that Jedi Council.
No, man. It really wasn't. But that's why it's my favorite. Plus, man, the lightsaber fights.
Oh,
jeez.
Also the hype around it, man. Like just going to see it in the theaters on opening night, like that was such an electric time. Like people, whenever we went and saw it, people brought lightsabers and they did like a little choreographed like fight on the floor, like down at the floor in front of the screen before the previews. Like it
But I
was.
will say, Attack of the Clones, I really liked it, especially the end fight with Dooku, Anakin, and Obi-Wan.
Mhm.
Seeing Anakin dual wield, that's cool. But then again, Rogue One, like I can't, I don't think we've talked about it enough, and we've talked about it a lot. That is such a good movie. Love that movie.
Yeah. So, favorite action figures, new or old?
I'll go. Like I said today, I was walking in my laundry room, and that cold weather gear Plo Koon, man, that's so cool. I really
Yeah.
dig that figure. Also, growing up, Chewbacca, it was from, I want to say Return. Wills, man, that thing was so used up. Like, it was just loose and well loved, as an action figure should be when you're growing up. Those are my new and old. What about you, Tyler?
Well, I mean, this will come as no surprise to you guys. It's the clone gunship, specifically the shark mouth, blue and white stripe clone
From the micro
gunship.
series.
Well, the big one. I have the
Yeah.
but yeah.
No, I mean like the
Oh, oh
2D
yeah,
animated
yes,
micro
from the
series.
micro
Yeah.
series, yes, from the
Yeah.
the Clone Wars that was not the series, but the actual micro series
Yeah.
cartoon. Yes,
Oh man,
that's my
that's good.
favorite. I have that. I have that clone gunship. I have it loaded up with 501st clones
Like you do.
because they fit with that scheme, and it's amazing. I love the gunship. Honorable mention to the Arc 170 with the shark teeth. Probably my runner up there. So interestingly enough, I'm a big OT guy, and I do love the prequels as well. But my favorite vehicles almost all come out of the prequels, which is interesting. But yeah, that's my go to.
Mine, I'm gonna have to say, I think I'm gonna have to say the Darth Revan vintage collection that I have with the cloth. It's got like his cloak is cloth, and like his, I don't want to say dress, but like his robes are cloth too, and it's just everything I wanted. Like it's everything I could want in a Darth Revan action
I
figure.
remember you had tons of Power of the Force though growing up.
I still
That
do.
was your jam.
I still have them all.
One of the figures that I look at that I have in one of my shadow boxes is just a simple rebel soldier
Hmm.
from that. It looks really cool.
Yeah, it was Return of the Jedi. I think it was the indoor
Yeah,
rebel
it was
soldier.
an
Yeah.
indoor soldier from Power of the Force. I thought it looked cool.
Finally, let's talk about A New Hope. Wink for the future. What do we want to see? What Star Wars you want to see? Just have fun with it. Book the territory.
In Kenobi, the series, they mention Quinlan Voss survived, so I'd like to see him pay that off. And it doesn't necessarily have to be in a series or a movie or anything like that. A comic book series would be cool. Go that route.
Be cheaper.
Yeah. Hall of Mirrors doing something, you know, like maybe we could get a new sequel trilogy. I know that's been talked to death, but man, come on. It would be nice. I don't think it'll happen, but it'd be a lot cooler if it did.
What about you, Tyler?
Yeah, there's many things I want to see. If you said, "Hey, pick one thing that you could have," I'm with Mike. I'm going to take a Hall of Mirrors and reset that sequel trilogy into something that makes some semblance of sense. And I really don't like the Hall of Mirrors as a concept. I will tell you guys, I don't enjoy that. I have not
Yeah.
thought that was great. But if you could use it for something like that, then please do. Good lord, and you could. They're not going to, but I mean that I would pick that. Barring that, because I think we all know that at this point the heels are dug in. They're not going to do that. Give me a animated series. Base it in either KOTOR, the Knights of the Old Republic, or the Old Republic, the MMO game.
Mhm.
Place it in one of those two eras. I would love it if you would do it in the hand drawn animation style, like what we would see back in like 80s, 90s anime. I'm sure they won't do that because it's
It's
labor
so
intensive and
expensive.
cost intensive. But I would love to see that. If we're picking what we want to see, that's what I want to see. And if you're not going to do that, fine, do CGI, but don't do the Clone Wars CGI, please. Do the kind of CGI like what we've seen in the Old Republic MMO for those cutscenes. Like, let's take that kind of CGI and let's utilize those types of things and build a
Okay.
series around it. because you just can't beat the combat and the fights that we get out of those types of movies and what can be created. You're not going to do that live action and have it make any sense and have it work that way and be able to do what they can do. So those are the things I'd like to see.
So my big swing for the fences project is I don't even care about the Hall of Mirrors getting like undoing the sequel trilogy. I just straight up make it not canon. Like if they're gonna come in,
they
look,
did it to Legends, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say if you're gonna take my Legends, say that it's not like canon for canon, eye for an eye.
No.
It just doesn't exist. But I want to see a series where I just give me a Dashran Dar and a Kyle Katarn series where it's just the two of them riding around on the Outrider, getting into smuggling and scoundrel adventures. Like, just sign me up.
I always like, speaking of scoundrels, and Tyler's mentioned the trailers for the video game. The gunslinger guy in that trailer, a cartoon with him, that'd be cool.
He's got a name. It escapes me at the time at this current moment, but I think he winds up being a companion. Like you're able to recruit him.
Yeah,
and he can either heal you or do DPS or whatever. But yeah, he's really cool. So yeah, I think just a show of them two getting in adventures, not adopting or coming across a child or anything like that. I'm talking like underground, seedy underbelly,
like some heist stuff.
Yeah, like high stakes, high adventure heists,
whodunit type adventures.
So with those two, that's and of course flying around in the Outrider, because like just make it like the same vein as like Firefly or something, but with those two. So
those two and maybe some supporting cast as crew.
Yeah, or maybe they find like it might be the two of them getting into like wacky hijinks and then stumbling across a carbonite slab, thawing it out, and it being like one of the clones of Starkiller, who's like not as overpowered as he is in the video games, but like adjacent enough. And so it'd just be kind of like a love letter to the old LucasArts games, but in a show that I would watch and would hopefully make money and make toys. So,
that's right. Make money, make figs.
All right. Well, that's going to about do it for us. Announcements. JoeCon is ever on the horizon, and probably talk more about that. So I don't currently have anything at the moment. So
just JoeCon coming up. I'm definitely going to try to hit the Oklahoma City stores before we go, just to ease my mind. Probably around my birthday in May sometime.
Yeah. All right. Well, that'll do it for us. I've been Joe. With me, as always, has been Mike and Tyler, and we appreciate y'all.
Yep.
Staying tuned and helping us figure it out.
Take it easy, y'all.
Oh,
Nico Okar is that smuggler's name.
That's it.
Yep. And he is voiced by, oh gosh, what is his name? I know he's the voice of Jake from Adventure Time. John DiMaggio. Jake from Adventure Time. Marcus Phoenix from Gears of War.
We didn't lose our credibility, guys.
And Bender from Futurama. All the same.
Bender
Good job,
Bending
Tyler.
Rodriguez, baby.